Tonight, you will have between 4 and 6 dreams. You will spend roughly 2 hours inside them. And by the time you pour your morning coffee, almost all of it will be gone.
Not faded, gone, like it never existed. You might catch a single image, a face, a staircase, a color that felt important. But the story, the feeling, the logic that made complete sense at 3 a.m. vanished. And here's the strange part. It is not a flaw. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. So why? Why does the mind build entire worlds every single night only to erase them before breakfast? The answer reaches back millions of years, and it says something deeply unsettling about the version of you that exists when you are asleep. Start here. When you dream, you are not unconscious. Your brain is extraordinarily active. In fact, during REM sleep, the stage where most vivid dreaming happens, your brain consumes nearly as much energy as it does when you are wide awake. The visual cortex lights up. The emotional centers surge. The motor cortex fires. If you were watching a brain scan, you would barely be able to tell the difference between someone dreaming and someone fully alert. But one region goes quiet, almost completely silent. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, self-awareness, and memory encoding, essentially shuts down. And that is where the story begins. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, author of Why We Sleep, describes REM sleep as the brain's emotional processing laboratory. During this phase, your mind replays experiences, strips away the raw emotional charge, and files them into long-term memory. It is therapeutic work. It is necessary work. But it requires that the self-aware, critical, logical, you stay out of the way. So the prefrontal cortex goes offline, and without it, the mechanism you use to consciously form and store memories is essentially unplugged. Dreams are not meant to be recorded. They are meant to be processed. Think about what memory actually requires. When you experience something while awake, a conversation, a near accident, a joke, your hippocampus tags it. It says, "This matters, store it." That tagging process needs attention. It needs the prefrontal cortex to evaluate whether something is worth keeping. Without that evaluation, the experience dissolves. This is why the first 5 minutes after waking are so critical. Researcher Rosalind Cartwright at Rush University spent decades studying sleep and dreaming and found that dream recall is almost entirely dependent on what happens in those first moments of consciousness. If you reach for your phone, if you start planning your day, if noise pulls you into the waking world too fast, the fragile neural trace of the dream gets overwritten before it ever had a chance to consolidate. Your brain does not wait for you to be ready. It starts encoding your waking reality the moment your eyes open. And dreams, with no prefrontal tag marking them as important, simply get pushed out. But here is what makes this stranger. It is not just the absence of a recording mechanism. Your brain appears to actively resist dream memory. In 2011, French neuroscientist Perrine Ruby and her team at the Lyon Neuroscience Research Center identified a key difference between people who regularly remember their dreams and people who almost never do. It was not intelligence. It was not sleep quality. It was not how vivid the dreams were. The difference was a small region in the brain called the temporoparietal junction. In high dream recallers, this region showed significantly more activity, both during sleep and during brief moments of waking in the night. What does the temporoparietal junction do? It processes the boundary between self and environment. It is the region that notices. It is the part of the brain that asks, is something happening out there that I should pay attention to? High recallers, it turns out, wake up more often during the night, briefly, sometimes without knowing it. And in those micro-awakenings, while the dream is still fresh, the prefrontal cortex briefly comes back online, just long enough to tag the experience, just long enough to say, remember this. People who remember almost nothing wake up and go straight to morning without those gaps. The dream never gets a window. And this raises a question that researchers are still arguing about. Is forgetting your dreams a bug, or is it the whole point? Evolutionary psychologist and sleep researcher Antti Revonsuo at the University of Turku in Finland proposed what he called the threat simulation theory of dreaming. In his view, dreams, particularly nightmares and anxiety dreams, are a kind of survival rehearsal. Your brain runs threat scenarios while you sleep, practicing responses to predators, conflict, danger, and social rejection. This would explain why dreams so often feel urgent, terrifying, or emotionally loaded. But if that is true, why forget them? Because if you remembered every threat simulation in vivid detail, you would wake up in a state of chronic fear. You would spend your waking hours flooded with half-remembered dangers, false memories of attacks that never happened, grief over losses that were never real. The forgetting is the mercy. Your brain runs the simulation, extracts whatever the emotional lesson was, and then wipes the file. You do not need the dream. You just need what it left behind. And what does it leave behind? More than you think. Studies going back to the 1970s have repeatedly shown that people who sleep well, and particularly people who complete full REM cycles, perform better on creative problem-solving tasks the next day, not because they remember any specific dream, but because the processing that happened during dreaming reorganized their thinking. New connections formed, old patterns broke apart, solutions appeared that had not been visible before. The chemist August Kekule famously described discovering the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake biting its own tail. Paul McCartney reportedly woke up with the melody of Yesterday fully formed, played it before he fully woke up, and spent days convinced he had accidentally remembered someone else's song. Neither of them needed to replay the full dream. The gift had already been delivered. Your brain is doing this every single night. You just do not get to watch the process. But here is what no one tells you. The act of trying to remember your dreams changes them. The moment you reach backward into a dream, the second you try to grab it, you are using the very cognitive machinery that was absent when it was created. You are asking the logical, sequential, narrative-building prefrontal cortex to reconstruct something that was built without it. And so it fills in the gaps. It imposes a story structure. It smooths over the weird parts. What you end up with is not the dream. It is your brain's best guess at what the dream probably was. Dream journals help, and researchers like Cartwright recommend them, not because they perfectly preserve dream content, but because the act of writing the moment you wake, before your waking mind has reorganized anything, captures the raw fragments closest to the real experience. Even then, you are working with a signal that is already mostly noise. So tonight, you will dream. Your brain will construct something elaborate and strange and emotionally true. It will solve problems you did not know you were carrying. It will rehearse fears you would rather not face. And then it will dissolve it, systematically, as the morning comes, because the work is already done. You do not remember your dreams because you are not supposed to. The mind does not build worlds for you to watch. It builds them to change you. And by the time you reach for your coffee, you are already different, reshaped by stories you will never get to read.
Tonight, when the lights go out and your eyes close, something will happen in that silence that your waking self will never fully know. And somehow, that is exactly how it was always meant to work.